So when Street Fighter 2 came out, I wasn't really too impressed by it. I think I finished it once, picked Zangief because I was a wrestling fan, and then kind of moved on. I eventually kind of fell in with a crowd that really got a lot out of Street Fighter 2. And so suddenly it became very apparent I need to get great at that game. One guy showed up and said, "Hey, have you heard of this other game, Mortal Kombat?" I'm like, no, what is Mortal Kombat? And he said, "Well, you know, it's like Street Fighter, but you can fucking kill people." Okay, well, we need to go see this game right now.
I absolutely remember the first time I played Mortal Kombat. It was at Lions Family Fun, my favorite arcade.
My dad would usually give my brother and me $5 each and let us run wild while he went shopping.
I was at an arcade in Virginia.
The Q Lounge in the Bronx, New York. It was a space that was half smoky pool hall, half arcade.
He took us to an arcade 2 towns north, up to Santa Rosa. There's a place called Systems City. And it was like part skate shop, but in the back room, all the lights were off, and they had like 5 arcade machines back there.
I see this huge crowd gathered around a new cabinet.
And it was sitting there. There was nobody around it.
No one was playing it. It was just sitting there. What is this?
I just remember just like a big line around the cabinet.
Everyone is crowded around Mortal Kombat. It is simultaneously exactly like and nothing like Street Fighter. You know, the film, the presentation, the real actors and actresses and all of that really just, it's so striking.
In Mortal Kombat, when you're seeing those 2 big characters on the screen, I was just like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Instantly, it was like, oh, it's digitized. It's real people. It was like, wow, this is incredible. It's like, how are they doing this? How did this game come to be?
I was blown away by how it looked.
Because it was a violent, bloody game.
Like, that's the first time I've seen blood in a video game that I remembered.
Even from a basic high punch, you just see blood flying out of these people's heads.
Liu Kang wins.
Even if I couldn't do the specials of certain characters, I could fall into a rhythm that just felt so good. Just like, you know, air kick, uppercut. And I was, I feel like the baddest motherfucker in the world.
In a time where you didn't see that kind of stuff in games and especially in arcades where kids were, you know, running around with their parents, and parents were still freaking out too, kind of seeing what was happening.
My dad came up behind me. I didn't know this at the time, but the screen went dark. Kano ripped out a heart and held it up, blood dripping from it. And my dad went, "Oh, no, 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 no," and whisked me out of the arcade. And that's when I knew I had to play that game because I was not allowed to play that game.
People getting chopped in half and torsos being dismembered.
Liu Kang wins. Flawless victory. Fatality.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that in a video game. I didn't know that was allowed in a video game.
And we're, you know, 16, 17 at the time. So this is the most exciting thing in the world.
The endings and how every character had, even though Street Fighter, they had an ending, but Mortal Kombat was like the first thing that really affected me that was like, I really want to play all these characters to see what happens. And this is before YouTube, so it wasn't like you could just go on YouTube and watch it. You had to, you know, earn it, right?
What's Kano's backstory? You know, what about Sonya? That's what we wanted to know about. And, you know, they specified a lot of it kind of in, you know, various screens and whatnot. You know, we were hooked.
But it didn't take long from there for that game to be literally everywhere. Every single pizza place, 7-Eleven, arcades, the arcades that were left at that point, all of them had a Mortal Kombat machine probably within a month.
The idea to produce a comic book for the first MK game, that started with me. Coming from comic books, I had a great desire to sort of tell this story that we weren't able to tell in the game. And so I thought, what better place to do it in a comic book? I talked to Ed about it, and so Ed thought it was a great idea, and I think the both of us went to Roger Sharp to try to see if there was any money that we could get from marketing to help us produce this comic book.
I tried to always do stuff that I thought would be special, and John, pulled together, here's a comic book.
I wasn't getting paid anything extra to draw this comic, so I wrote the story and did the illustrations. Roger was able to scrape up, I think, a few $1,000s for the printing, and we were able to produce a few thousand copies of this comic, and we weren't sure how many we were going to sell. There was an advertisement in the game, and players would see the advertisement in the track mode, and they would mail in a check for $3. Sometimes they would mail cash. Ed and I would get bags of envelopes, sent to a P.O. box, and they would ship us these boxes of comics. Okay, well, who's gonna pack and mail these things? And so there was nobody to do that. So Ed and I ended up sitting in his office with boxes of comics. We were the ones opening each envelope, collecting the money, writing the addresses on the envelopes, packing the comics, and mailing them all out. I remember we did that one weekend. It was just Ed and I. And then we decided, we invited other people around the office, like, hey, come and help us pack the comics, and we'll buy a pizza. Every once in a while I would sign one. We would write these weird encryptions on the envelopes. Sometimes I would draw a picture on the envelope, little messages to the players. I don't know if anybody ever saved any of that stuff. But eventually I think we were in over our heads because the stuff just kept coming.
And sales took off. We had to go back in and reprint the comic book.
And then eventually Roger, I think, handled, I don't know who he paid to do the packing and the mailing and stuff.
We were packaging and boxing up, thank you, Jeanette and Alice, to get everything out to people.
But the first, I think, few thousand comic books were hand packed and hand addressed by, Ed and myself and a couple of the other folks around the office.
And that was the start of the merchandising program for Mortal Kombat.
first time I saw a crowd gathered around a Mortal Kombat cabinet when I was 10 told me that, okay, this game is a big deal at my arcade. I had no idea if that translated outside my arcade. Then Mortal Monday happened. Not just the day itself, but the build up to it.
Seeing the zeitgeist around it was huge. Conversations around Mortal Monday were happening, the first kind of big marketing push.
Acclaim was clearly, they knew what they had in their hands, and so they were doing a much bigger effort in promoting it. I remember them telling us that they were going to spend $10 million to advertise this game, and I remember saying, you know, are you sure you want to put that kind of money behind this? And you know, in retrospect, of course that was a right decision, but I remember being really paranoid, thinking, you know, that they were putting a lot on this game.
The preparation for the release of Mortal Kombat was just massive. I was working at Babbage's Software. Pre-sales had started early, so like we knew we were going to be just selling out. It was all I could talk about.
I remember going to see a movie, I can't remember which film it was, and they were advertising Mortal Mondays, which was one of the greatest marketing blitzes in video game history. And it was just, you know, all these random kids yelling in the middle of a city street, Mortal Kombat, right?
Mortal Kombat!
That commercial with like people running down the street screaming Mortal Kombat, and they were teens, and I was a little kid, and teens are the coolest thing you could be when you're a little kid.
You don't have to show screenshots or anything else necessarily. Everybody knew. All you have to do is just have somebody out in the middle of the street just putting up his arm saying Mortal Kombat. It's almost like, hi, it's here. It sells itself.
Mortal Kombat!
We were all like, yo, did you see that Mortal Kombat commercial? What is Mortal Kombat? And there was always like one kid who knew a little more. It's a video game, but you kill people. And all of us at Maplewood Elementary School were like, whoa!
We had 2 front monitors that were just showcasing Mortal Kombat videos. And
in the comics, on the back of the comics, there were Mortal Monday ads. There were Mortal Kombat ads in magazines. There were Mortal Kombat ads in subways.
You know, just seeing the standees and the posters and things at Times Square, and
the signage that was coming in, every piece of memorabilia that was coming in, and t-shirts, and it was just over the top compared to other games.
I remember just being nervous about it, thinking, I hope this game lives up to it. Even though it was a huge arcade game, you know, you just never know in the fall.
Ed. It was insane. There was a giant line, and it was just so exciting.
That's when I realized, like, this is actually a bigger deal than maybe any video game that's come before it. Mortal Kombat became a pillar of popular culture within 12 months. It was, I think, the fastest a video game had ever exploded to date.
Nothing could prepare you for it. It was, it was just insane.
We were aware that Acclaim had a deal that they were going to do all the home games because also they had done super high impact for the home. And Acclaim had their kind of production group, which was our main point of contact, but then they had the two software houses, you know, Probe and Sculptured. And so there was a lot of communication that had to kind of bounce back and forth.
Probe offered me Mortal Kombat on the Mega Drive, the Genesis version, and I said yes. I'm free. I'm available. Like a job's a job, and I said, well, what is it? They were able to kind of actually bring me an arcade machine into my house. And kind of started playing it, and I thought, well, this looks easy enough.
When Mortal Kombat 1 was going to be made for the Super Nintendo, through Sculptured Software, we had a programmer that was from outside our place, and brought him in and said, hey, you're the main guy. And that did not go as well as we would have wanted it to go.
Tests were right.
Ed and I would get versions of the game, and so I would give feedback in terms of the pixel art as best I could. Of course, the home games at the time, they didn't have quite the capabilities that we did in the arcade.
I think the biggest problem that we had wasn't as much the power of the machine, but how big the memory of the Mega Drive was. In A, we had to shrink all the sprites really down as much as we possibly could, and there's a lot of frames of animation in there. You know, we started off by kind of basically taking out every other frame, and that wasn't enough. So then we had to take out like 3 out of 5 frames, and then kind of concentrate on the important animations, the ones that let you see most. Williams have like a method of writing. It's almost like a kind of multi-threading. It's like that there's a number of different programs all operating at the same time. So one of those programs operates one of the characters, one program operates one of the weapons, one of them operates the background, and all of those different little programs kind of speak to each other. That isn't a method of programming I had any experience of. It took me a while to work it out. A kind of Probe were getting very nervous because there wasn't anything on the screen. I was working, there wasn't anything on the screen. And then eventually I was able to basically kind of translate the original code almost line by line. It kind of worked, and the whole thing kind of came to life. What it meant as well, though, was that it was very accurate, you know, very close to the original arcade version in terms of how it feels playing it. So everyone was then very happy with me, which was great.
Genesis played much better, and it had the blood, the abacab, and all that.
Get over here!
Super Nintendo version looked great, but it didn't play as good as the Genesis version.
The programmer that was the lead, but he made some missteps at the beginning of the project, and it was really hard to finish. These were conversions. These were not original games. You're trying to take the code and the assets and port it to that platform. They had this little multi-processing system in there. He said, I don't like the way that works. I want to do it my way. So he's going against the grain the whole time.
Johnny Cage wins.
The quality of the game was something that that was important to us. I know Ed was a stickler in terms of what he was willing to approve.
Come here!
And we were down to the wire. We were, saying that, we're not going to approve it until you fix this, this, and that. And
I ended up having to help him. So it got done, but it didn't. It played not quite as well.
They needed to build millions of cartridges, and there's lead times involved with that. And so those two things kind of conflicted a couple times, and there was some tension there.
Mustard and myself grew up in a really small town. The closest thing you would have to an arcade machine is the local bowling alley may have had like a light gun game, but that's pretty much it. It was only the home versions that allowed us to experience the different franchises, and I feel like I unofficially speak for quite a lot of people our age, how important getting those home versions as good as they were was. so that the rest of us could still experience it in different parts of the world, that arcades weren't as common, especially those small towns.
Which side was I on in the home versions? There's only one side. Like, what do you know, it's just the Genesis version. There's only one version of the game. The Super Nintendo version is a travesty by comparison.
I actually thought that even though the Genesis was a little behind graphically than the Super Nintendo, I liked the grittier look of the Genesis version. It really felt kind of down and dirty the way Mortal Kombat should.
I mean, also the Genesis version had the blood code. And the real fatalities and the Dullard Code and all the other cool stuff in it. I think that made up for like the music in the Genesis version being really hokey and some of that other stuff.
My friend had a Genesis. They got Mortal Kombat. His mom would come in every now and then just to look at the screen to make sure there was no blood flying.
Finish him.
And so what we would do is we would enter the blood code, we'd play a match or two, and then we'd hit reset, turn off the blood code, keep playing when she came in, and then she'd leave and we'd turn the blood code back on.
Nintendo screwed the pooch when they didn't allow the blood in the game, and they instead put sweat in it, which the Genesis version outsold the SNES version like 3-1 or something like that. Everybody wanted the violence, you know, they wanted the blood.
The Super Nintendo version feels like mud. Like the act of playing that game is so unlike playing the actual arcade game.
So I really wanted Mortal Kombat. Not just to fit in, but because I loved it. I wanted it so bad, but my family didn't have a ton of money. So I scraped together all the money I had, and I was able to finally afford Mortal Kombat for the Game Boy. And that game is a experience. When you play Mortal Kombat in the arcade, it's a little bit heavy and you feel the power of those hits. Mortal Kombat on the Game Boy moved like two frozen people were slowly trying to get close enough to hug. Like when you'd push the punch button, it would eventually move the fist forward a little bit at maybe 1 frame per minute. I cannot do a fatality in this game. I know for a fact they exist because the computer can do the fatalities on that pit level. Instead of having them fall off the stage onto spikes, at the end of each part of the level were just little drawn spikes in the background that you could knock them onto. And I think that was their like makeshift solution for having a stage-based fatality. Even as a kid, I knew it was not the best version, but I loved it so much. I even put in a Game Genie code that let you play as Goro. Like, I did every secret possible. I was going to squeeze every single dollar I put into that game. And I still own it, and I'll still play it occasionally because I'm kind of a masochist, but there's something special about it. There's something that's kind of like pure about a Mortal Kombat game that's so weird and watered down and slow that it almost circles back around to being kind of creepy and mysterious.
I mean, they may not have been like arcade perfect, but to us, we didn't know any better. We didn't have anything to comparison. All we cared about was just, you know, play the game, have fun with it, you know, and enjoy what we were doing, and that was about it.
Blood splatters from the contestants' heads. When a player wins, the so-called death sequence begins. The game narrator instructs the player to finish, and I quote, finish his opponent.
Video games were becoming more and more sophisticated, maturing.
It was around that time that we were realizing that video games aren't just for kids. The manufacturers of the home consoles still kind of thought of them that way. It's like, hey, this is a toy for kids.
We never made Mortal Kombat for 6-year-olds or anything like that. That was never the intention. 4 guys in their 20s, what kind of video game are they going to make?
In our minds, we were creating the game for a certain demographic of player.
Fans of Terminator, Bloodsport, Alien, Predator, you know, all these movies. It was a game by guys in their 20s, 4 guys in their 20s. And nobody mentioned anything during the arcade days.
Once the game came home on the consoles, it came into people's living rooms. That was a shocker to the moms and dads of suburbia.
Blood splatters from the contestants' heads. When a player wins, the so-called death sequence begins. The game narrator instructs the player to finish, and I quote, finish his opponent.
My parents were very worried about the violence in Mortal Kombat because eventually they saw the news stories. They saw the news stories that were like you could rip out someone's spine or you could light them on fire. Like I had a friend who was not allowed to go to another friend's house because he had played Mortal Kombat with him.
And we also really didn't see a lot of animated blood in video games back then. It seems so commonplace today.
What is the difference in between this and violent movies? Why is it different?
No one's looking at movies in the same way as they're looking at video games.
Rock music before it and comics and heavy metal.
You know, I grew up at a time, Elvis Presley's body was blacked out from the waist down because he was gyrating, and God only knows what that's going to do to today's youth.
I do think that there was a number of kind of politicians and other people who were looking for a scapegoat. Kind of this was it. It came along at the right time.
Kano wins. Flawless victory.
It was just like, video games are bad, and these are the ones doing it. I think the thing that made me most angry about it was it just felt like no one involved in any of this had ever actually played a video game or seen this stuff outside of very carefully selected footage.
It was like fairly like kind of innocuous, and it was like kind of cartoon violence.
And yeah, it seems violent, but ultimately it's really just funny.
Yeah, it's like Evil Dead, isn't it?
The very idea that like Mortal Kombat was somehow going to destroy society or the fabric of our youth or anything was always ridiculous.
These home games had no system of ratings, right? Like a CD would say explicit lyrics or something. A movie would say rated R for violence or, you know, whatever. And I think to me that was the fundamental issue. Somebody noticed and somebody objected to it, and we certainly didn't disagree with it.
And so I think that the reaction from Congress and everything at the time almost to me felt appropriate.
Yeah, I'd say having the conversation about violence in video games and ratings in video games ultimately is something that was going to happen sooner or later. Is the industry going to be able to self-regulate, or is the government going to have to come in and do a bunch of really dumb things?
I think that the rating system helps people make more informed decisions about what they're buying, and that included Mortal Kombat. If you're a parent who bought their kids games, they probably shouldn't have been playing Mortal Kombat unless you could supervise them. It was the next step in the maturity of the industry, and the rating system was kind of emblematic of that. It was a way to say, hey, here's this type of game, here's the type of content, make your own choice.
You know, the rating system and stuff that came from it felt like the right choice, you know, to make.
I think that if video games were like a squalling infant that was just learning how to crawl, Mortal Kombat got them toddling on their feet.